What is going on, Amazon sellers, arbitrageurs, and resellers of all stripes? My name's Chris Grant, and today we're going to be talking about repricing. I am joined by Finn Parker, who is a friend of mine, happens to be the customer success manager at Aura, which is the repricer of choice for myself. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of things. This is actually kind of an update on a video that we've done in the past about how Aura works, how to get the most out of it, and kind of allow you a behind the scenes peek of what a repricer can do for you, and allow you to kind of understand what happens under the hood so that it's not just theory. So, Finn, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm gonna share your screen here, okay?
Sure.
And let's talk a little bit about Aura 1.0. All right. And now a lot of people might be confused and they'll say, oh, well, Aura 1.0, this is their first version. No, it's not. This is, I think, and the way Dylan explains it makes a lot of sense. This is the first version of the new Aura, or what Aura has been envisioned as for quite some time. You guys used to be a rules-based repricer where you go in and you tell it, if X happens, then we respond in Y manner. But now you have Maven, which is it's your AI system that it kind of learns from your competitors. It figures out if they are cooperative competitors, if they're non-cooperative competitors, and then it kind of figures out a pricing strategy that will optimize you to get sales at a good margin, rather than just saying, you know what, I want to match the buy box seller, and if they go down, I'll go down. And if they go down again, I'll keep following them down to my minimums. Is that about right?
Yeah. It's dependent on the configuration of the strategy, but generally speaking, with rule based, it's a lot less complex. It's a lot more straightforward, and that's generally where we see prices tending to be lowered more so than with an AI model that's a little bit more intelligent and trying to balance for both sales velocity and profitability.
Perfect. Well, let's dive into Maven and kind of peel back and look under her hood a little bit and tell me how it works and what you can anyway, of course, without giving up any company secrets, but tell me how it works and how it is good for the Amazon seller.
Yeah, for sure. So Maven is the name of the model of AI that we have out now to complement the rule-based strategies that we've always offered with Aura. So from a very high level, and this is the way that Aura works is, you have your minimum and maximum prices, which effectively just define the range where Aura is authorized to move your price between. And so those are set individually on each of your listings. And then the strategy is the playbook that Aura follows while staying in between those bounds. And so the strategy, we have added the ability to select, we now have a true AI strategy model named Maven, that, it's a lot more, it's a very dynamic strategy. It's very adaptive. And so, kind of right off the bat, when you go to set up, a strategy, you're greeted by having two different parts of, or two different types of strategies. There's Maven under AI, and then there's rule-based, which has our traditional, pre-configured settings here. One of the first things that users notice is that if you were to go in and create a rule-based strategy, right, there's up to 30 different settings that you're in control of ultimately. But however, that can be a confusing experience for users. And so, and this is the way it's kind of always been. You define the who, the how, the what happens in certain edge cases. It's very much in your control. There's a lot of different variables at play here. And so, this can create an overwhelming experience. With Maven, you'll notice that there's a noticeable lack of settings in here. So when you go to set up a Maven strategy, selecting the model of Maven, you're kind of greeted with this intro page. There's not a whole lot for you to change here. There's a short video of Dylan, our co-founder, walking us through kind of the logic. But aside from that, minimax prices, that's found on every strategy. Like I said, minimum prices are required to reprice, but there's really not much in here for you to adjust, and that's by design. That's intended. The model is built to learn and adapt to the competitor's behavior and effectively create for you a tailored strategy specific to each listing.
Mm-hmm. And now let's talk a little bit about why there is that minimum price in there, because
Sure.
of course, AI is going to be smart, and I'll come to that here in a second, but
Yeah.
the minimum price is kind of like your guardrail. It makes sure that no matter what, you can't go
Safety
below this portion. Okay.
Yeah.
But AI in your guys' case it's not just some algorithm that people call AI. It's actually something that it's learning what's going on a particular listing, and then it's responding in a manner, and then getting feedback from that and going back to it over and over again. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's both of your points are correct, and I'm happy to kind of speak to each of those. I'll start with the min and max range. Again, the minimum and maximum prices. Again, the min price, as we call it, that's required in every listing. And you're 100% correct in that its primary role is to safeguard your products from selling under what is profitable based on what you enter. There's a couple different ways you can set minimum prices. The automatic methods include, you enter a desired ROI value or a margin value or a fixed profit value. Alternatively, you can just select manual and it will fill those values in for yourself. But the whole point of a min price is to protect yourself from receiving sales from under what's profitable. So the min and max range is ultimately that's where you are telling Aura that you're willing to accept sales between. That's the range where Aura is given where it knows it can reprice between. And so even if you set the min and max prices automatically, which Maven actually has a really neat trick that allows you to never even think about max prices again, you always have the ability to manually override and take control of these values. And so you're right. The minimum price is there to protect your profit. It's there to make sure you don't sell under what the absolute lowest value is that you would accept a sale at. That's its job. But the maximum price plays a little bit of a different role. And this is why we allow Aura the AI model to calculate the optimal maximum price for you in real time based off of a number of different data points. Of course, you can override that too if you'd like to, but the maximum price is really there to kind of provide a lid or a cap on your pricing. If the event where there was a certain parameter or setting that called for Aura to go to your max price, you don't want to raise it too high and then cause, a pricing error or, potentially cause the buy box to become suppressed. And so, Maven, what it will do is it will find the optimal max price in real time. And the kind of the concept behind a maximum price is to really contain your pricing into a range where people would realistically pay for the item. And so, if you choose to set them manually, which is completely fine, like ask the inner consumer, in you, what is the most someone would realistically pay for this item? That's how I recommend setting them. And that's how you create an effective range where Aura can reprice between a value where you would minimally accept a sale at your min price and a value at the top end where you think people would probably, stop paying for that item.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're selling a keychain, chances are people are not going to pay $99 for that keychain. But if your max price is, let's say $15, for whatever reason, somebody spends $15 on a keychain, that makes a lot more sense,
Correct. Exactly.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the more advanced features inside of Maven that you can set inside your repricer?
Yeah, for sure. So this is the strategy builder for Maven. And like I said before, there's really minimal settings for you to adjust in here. And that's purely by design. The reason for that is because Maven is a model that's built to learn and adapt to each individual listing. We believe that every listing should have a strategy designed for it that adapts in real time to its own conditions. And this is what I like to tell people is that every ASIN on Amazon that you sell on is as unique as the sellers that make up it. No two ASINs are the same. No two ASINs have, pricing behavior that is the same because of the mix of sellers and whatever, repricing tools they may be using, whatever parameters they're using. Maven is built to adapt to that. And so the way I like to generally position the two is that, with rule-based, you're in control of every last gory detail. There's up to 30 settings you can change to your heart's content, and you're in full control of virtually everything it does. Maven, and that's the playbook. That the aggregate of those 30 settings is your playbook. With Maven, it builds its own playbook. And so, and we take a very hands-off approach to this. So in a way, you're kind of relinquishing control, but it almost to better benefit you. And so the way that Maven actually approaches repricing, it's kind of like what it says here. It actually goes and identifies. So part of the data that we receive from Seller Central, because we run based off of the feeds we receive, that's how we populate the app with data. Includes the competitor data. It's effectively just a list of seller IDs. The prices that they're at in that current moment, their fulfillment method, just general information. And so the way that Maven is built is it creates a profile of each of the different seller IDs that it encounters on a given listing. And so based on how those seller IDs behave, the behavior that we observe when you come on, when you create your presence on the listing, we track that, we aggregate it, and then that becomes the playbook. So, for example, there's, maybe a certain ASIN with, 5 or 10 8 seller IDs selling on that product. They all have active offers. Maven will go and reprice against those different seller IDs, almost in like a testing and learning period. So the idea behind this is that we then gauge and monitor how they react to you coming on that listing. And so generally they're categorized into 2 different types. There's cooperative versus uncooperative. Cooperative just generally means that, they're not competing against you. So that means they're either matching you or raising the price relative to you. And that's generally favorable. The alternative is when they're uncooperative or competitive. And that means that when they detect your presence on the listing, they price beneath you. And of course, this behavior is, a bit more common given that, in the Amazon ecosystem, lower prices are incentivized for the buy box. So, but regardless, when we go in and find their behavior, we track it. So ultimately, the ASIN has a specific model now of the different seller IDs and the behaviors that you can expect, the different or the behavior you can expect the seller IDs to behave when you reprice against them. And so the aggregate of that is the model. This allows Maven to do a couple things. The first is that, contrasted to a rule-based strategy where you say target like the lowest FBA offer and reprice below them by a penny. And it'll do that pretty indiscriminately. Maven will actually mimic the behavior back that it observes. So, if a seller goes beneath you by a certain amount, we will track that, and then that will become Maven's behavior when it reprices against that particular seller ID. This allows Maven to be aggressive against the competitors where it needs to be, but also matches and raises a price where it can, where it has the opportunity to.
Fascinating. Now, I want to theorize something in real time with you. Okay.
Sure.
Because what I see, I've seen it myself, and I'm seeing it more and more frequent. Matter of fact, I was just on Twitter before you and I hopped on, and I saw someone say, I got a sale, at like, it was something like $10 above the buy box. Okay. So I would like to theorize here that Maven may also take that into account. If I'm getting a sale at $10 above the buy box, that's got to be figured into how can I optimally price this particular product in the future as well. And my theory is that Maven may not know that there's a regional buy box, but it's kind of figuring that out with the data that it's receiving. Whereas with a rule-based repricer, you can't take that into account. It's, well, if the seller feed comes to me and, X seller is 1 penny below me, and my rule is I need to price 1 penny below the lowest FBA seller, then I reprice to 1 penny below them. Whereas Maven can say, well, you know what? They might be priced lower than us, but 20 minutes ago, I got a sale at X price while they were at Y price. I'm going to go ahead and just leave things where it's at, and maybe I'll get a sale again. Is that correct, or am I way off base?
No, that's spot on, Chris. And I'm really happy that you used the word optimally in there, because that is how we, that's how we define how Maven's supposed to work. Maven isn't built to just go after the buy box. If you're looking for that type of behavior, we have a buy box targeting rule-based strategy, which will do that indiscriminately. With Maven, we chase what we call the optimal price. And so To kind of take a step back for a second, it's you kind of got to ask yourself, how do you define success with a repricer? Right? Is it purely increasing sales? Is it purely increasing buy box percentage? Do either of those take into consideration, the margin that you may be getting if the sales are increased? If I told you, I could increase your sales for your catalog, but your overall return, your ROI will drop by 20%. Is that really what you're looking for? And the truthful answer is that it depends. It depends on every seller's tolerances and preferences and business goals. But the way that we define the optimal price is, with Maven, we look at where do you want to go, right? Which is the optimal price. Like where do you want to go, and what's true now on the listing? We look at the behavior on the listing, we look at the spread of offers, and we try to close that gap the best we can to try to find the correct balance between sales velocity and profitability, because those two are inherently clashing goals. Every strategy that exists in Aura, and presumably all other repricers, exists on the spectrum of behavior, where on the extreme ends, you have, optimizing for velocity, which in Amazon world means, lowering your price aggressively, trying to chase, increase your sales without much regard for your profit. On the other end of that spectrum is, raising and matching the price to try to optimize for margin, which will likely mean at the expense of slowing down your sales a bit. Maven is built to straddle that line, straddle that spectrum, clean in the middle. And so, part of what we discussed about how it creates models of the competitors is part of that. But the other part of it is that also it chases the optimal price, which what we've found, and, from Twitter posts or X posts, will validate this too, is that oftentimes it's above the current buy box price. You can kind of think of it as in terms of like a children's toy, right? And in Q1, January through March, the price might be $20 for a certain toy. In Q4, the optimal price for that item, given that there's a huge surge in demand and a potential lack of lesser supply, is that the optimal price for that product may go from 20 to 25 or even 30, depending on the market conditions. It's economics plays a huge role in it. So you're 100% correct in that the optimal price is often higher than a current buy box. Buy boxes are inherently pushed down. There's a lot of downward pressure in this Amazon ecosystem because, it's general knowledge that lower prices win the buy box. And when you have a huge, a plethora of sellers only trying to lower their price and, undercutting each other with purely strictly rule-based strategies, we find that there's a lot of pressure on those prices, which brings them down probably lower than they probably should be. And so Maven tries to kind of see through that and price above where the buy box is. And people on, Twitter will attest to that, people generally see sales happening at higher prices with Maven that what you may otherwise see with a rule-based strategy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And one of the cool things is, I mean, I know a lot of people, they think AI and, they're just like, oh, well, I'm just waiting until Skynet goes live and then we don't have to worry about anything. But,
Sure.
One of the cool things with AI is that, if it's built properly, it's learning over time. So Maven should really get smarter, in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months from now, because there will be so many more data points, and it should get a heck of a lot tighter on what it can do for sellers.
100%.
It's going to be fascinating where this goes.
Yeah, no. And, we, like I said, AI has become such a buzzword in the especially the e-commerce price management community. Every tool now offers AI, and every tool's implementation, or, rather like depth and scope of their AI differs. But we are proud to have this proprietary model that we name Maven, that we've tested, built in-house, put under rigorous testing. And what we see is a lot of validation that it's succeeding in finding actually the true optimal price on listings. I'm actually really glad that you touched upon Maven getting smarter with time. That's very true. And the primary reason for that is that Maven is a very data-driven strategy. So ultimately, with more data will come better pricing decisions, and with more time will come more data. And so this kind of segues into how I recommend using Maven relative to other rule-based strategies that we've, previously and currently still recommend doing. is that, if you have the time to give Maven to learn and adapt and build its playbook and do its thing, in exchange for that time, that trade-off, you will be rewarded with sales that are higher than what you may otherwise see with, a rule-based strategy organically. And so, that's the primary trade-off is, Maven is going to require time to learn. And so on listings where there's, limited urgency, or there's really no urgency, this could be newer listings, like inventory with stock age under 30 days old. As a general use strategy, Maven's a great solution when there's no urgency on the listing. When you have the time to give it, it will learn, it will adapt, and you'll see results. With that said, that has a couple implications that I think are also important to note. Is that, because its behavior is so dependent on the behavior that it observes on a listing. If, for example, you want to move something, in terms of sales velocity faster than what it may organically sell for, as soon as you get a sense of urgency on a certain listing, that's where it may make sense to switch to a more aggressive rule-based strategy, which isn't basing its playbook off of the behavior it observes. Rather, that's kind of going back to the strategy under your control, where you define the rule and say, okay, maybe this certain product is, storage fees are looming, or, maybe I just want to have more liquidity on hand to fund a purchase order, or my Amex bill is due, whatever. If you have a sense of urgency to sell through a listing, and, the idea of getting every last, getting the optimal margin is kind of secondary, meaning you're prioritizing sales velocity, that's when I recommend switching to, a liquidation type of strategy versus Maven. So, and that's kind of sums up, how I position them is, Maven's a really good starting strategy where you have the time, you have the bandwidth and the headroom to give it. But, also don't be afraid, or, if the listing warrants it, or, if you personally just want to reclaim your capital quicker to then redeploy it, feel free to slot in, listings to more aggressive strategies to move them faster. Remember, it's they all exist on the spectrum. Maven's right in the middle. And so if you're looking for behavior that falls on either ends of the spectrum a little bit more than the middle, then it may make sense to use a rule-based strategy that is, positioned wherever it makes sense to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I'm glad you guys didn't take away the rule-based strategies, because there definitely are, times when that's something you should be using. One of the other features that you guys have introduced that I think is one, fascinating, but two, an incredible feature is hyperdrive. And for those who may not know, there's there's a bottleneck in all repricers, because most repricers say, we are instant repricers. And that is true. It's not being dishonest. However, the part that's not said out loud is, well, we're still hampered by the bottleneck that is Amazon. Because it takes time for them to send out the pricing feed. Then, of course, you guys have to crunch those numbers. You send the data back out to Amazon, and then they have to apply that feed to your listings. And so they are the bottleneck. And I know that can take, up to 180 seconds in some cases. But with Hyperdrive, you guys have found a way to cut through the clutter and skip the line a little bit to get some items repriced faster. Maybe these are the items that you're just extremely competitive on. Maybe they're incredibly fast-selling products, or maybe it's an item where the number of sellers is increasing at a rapid pace for whatever reason. But can you tell me a little bit about Hyperdrive, how it works, and what some use cases for it are?
Yeah, that's a great introduction to Hyperdrive, by the way, and the way you kind of visualized it is spot on. Again, Hyperdrive, Hyperdrive is just our branding of this new ability. It's almost a bit of a loophole in Amazon's API, and that allows us to expedite the speed of which we process price changes. And you're 100% correct. The instant price change that is industry standard that we've always offered and that we continue to offer when not using Hyperdrive. There is behind the scenes work involved in changing your price. And so, the way that we operate, and presumably other price management tools, is, we receive same thing as, how Maven kind of identifies the seller IDs. When any active offer on a certain ASIN adjusts their price, we receive an updated feed showing which seller ID updated their price, what their new price is. And so and then obviously we cross-reference that with your strategy to figure out who you're targeting. Maven's a bit different, but if the offer that you're targeting is the one that changed their price, then that is a cue for Aura to then change your price in response following your strategy settings, assuming it's within your min-max range. Now, the total time historically that it takes for a new feed to come in, showing that somebody updated their price, us to identify what your new price should be, if it should be updated at all, process that price change, fire that price change off to Amazon, receive a confirmation feedback showing your seller ID is the one that's been updated. That whole round trip process, multi-leg process, it takes probably 1.5 to 2 up to 3 minutes during peak season on average. And so you're right. We will batch these price changes, these feeds. We'll submit them as efficiently and as quickly as we're physically able to. And once we submit that off to Amazon, it's effectively out of our hands. We're kind of at the mercy of how quickly they can process that. And so, yeah, you're 100% correct. During high traffic periods in Q4, there are absolute limitations to it that unfortunately we just don't have control over. However, with Aura 1.0, we now have introduced a feature called Hyperdrive. And so, like I said, Hyperdrive is just our branding of it. As far as I'm aware, we're the only repricer that offers this feature right now. I'm yet to see it appear in any other tool. So what Hyperdrive is, you can almost visualize it as it's like the HOV lane or the Disney Fast Pass for price changes. And so that whole 2 to 3 minute round trip process that it takes to normally submit a price update for one of your SKUs gets condensed down to under 10 seconds. So the fact that we can update your price in under 10 seconds is a huge competitive edge in its own. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be more price changes on the listing. It just means that the price changes that Aura is already performing are going to take a fraction of the time. And you can almost visualize this too, where, if you're selling on a very, very active, potentially like low BSR, ASIN, where there's a lot of price changes, it's like constant fluctuations in price. Everybody's automating or using tools to adjust their pricing for them. It's if an Aura user with Hyperdrive enabled on that listing is repricing against somebody, I won't name drop, but certain repricers, again, industry standards 2 to 3 minutes. Some even throttle you down to 15 minutes. By the time one of those price changes is processed relative to Hyperdrive, rather, that data, that price is already obsolete by the time it even appears on Amazon. And so, we say, on your most critical, now Amazon actually caps us at 50 SKUs. So on our pro tier, you're allowed to have all 50 SKUs per marketplace, repriced using Hyperdrive. We then further limit it based on which tier you're on. But, we say on your most critical, like 50 listings, it's a bit of a, kind of a vague non-answer, but it's hard. It's subjective. It's kind of hard to tell you exactly what listings Hyperdrive will benefit on. Generally, I would say, the ones that have lower sales rank, a lot of activity, you're 100% right. Maybe the active offers are climbing. It could be your highest grossing listing. Those are generally ones where a vastly improved speed of price change would make a difference. It's actually probably easier to tell you the listings where it wouldn't help a lot. And those may include listings where the buy box is suppressed, where there's just kind of inherently less repricing activity, listings with very, very high sales rank, or maybe it's just yourself alone on the listing or one other. Those probably are ones where Hyperdrive wouldn't add the most value. But on your most critical, where there's a lot of pricing activity, it's really going to keep you ahead of the curve.
Awesome. I like that. Now, one of the other things that you guys have, and I know that something that's been very popular throughout the years is this thing called yo-yo repricing. We kind of bring our pricing down and then we put it back up. And Dylan and I have always called it the oscillation strategy. But you guys still have that available with workflows, correct?
Yes, correct. In fact, there's a couple of different ways you can implement this concept. So, the overarching idea of a yo-yo strategy, and I think everybody defines it slightly differently. The oscillation strategy, which is a rule-based strategy, which is based on a buy box targeting strategy. So to create an oscillation strategy, you would effectively start with buy box targeting, and then under the pursuit tab, which is effectively like the how, so how Aura reprices, it's the setting here. When your price reaches your min price, use max price. That's one form of this yo-yo strategy. So, in this scenario, if you have listings assigned to this specific strategy, whenever Aura is, repricing downward and the price is being lowered, again, this is your min max range here. Once it reaches your minimum price, Aura is then going to cycle your price back up to your max price. And hold it there for as long as your price would otherwise be at your min price. This has a couple, overarching kind of like incentives or goals rather. And again, this is also strictly just for the oscillation implementation of it. We also offer this ability. You can create this in workflows as well. But, the idea is that, if you reach your minimum price and you go up to your max price, assuming the other competitors, S in parentheses, is kind of pushing the price down, there's downward pressure. By you going up to your max price during that period of time because remember, you cannot go beneath your minimum price. That's a hard stop. Mm-hmm. You are almost relieving that pressure temporarily and almost incentivizing. Because remember, if this is the range where you can reprice between, maybe the ASIN spread is like this slightly, right? If you're working your way down and you reach your minimum price, by going up to your max price, and let's pretend the other offers are somewhere around here, you now created a gap between where they are and where you once were to where you are now, which is the max price. And certain tools, are built. Aura has this ability with the maintenance section to try to close the gap to within the next lowest seller when you win the buy box. It also just, if one of your competitors raises their price, that's an incentive opportunity for you to then raise your price to the competitor's price to restore margin on the listing. And so the idea is that, for here, there's two primary kind of goals. You could either encourage or incentivize everybody to raise their price, which kind of restores margin on the listing. And so when you resume competing, you start off near your max price versus already at your min price where you can't go any lower. The other kind of opportunity is, by you raising up to your max price and the other offer staying put, you could in turn almost like hand them the buy box temporarily and allow them to sell out, which, would then shift the buy box back up to you or someone near you once they're off the listing. That's kind of a best case scenario there. The other implementation is with workflows, which, workflows can be described as like a modular assistant for your account. It's a way to automate certain tasks. There's no right or wrong way to configure one. It's really, it's double-ended. So you define when it runs, and then when it runs, you define what happens when it runs. So right now, the events that you can use are a schedule, which, again, you can define whether it's repeating one time, certain time of day, or new listing. So for this one in particular, would do a schedule. And effectively, it would be, maybe once a day during off-peak hours, let's say 3 a.m. Eastern time, because we're here in Boston, you click continue, then you can add one, pause repricing, which just means it's going to suspend normal repricing activity. You could say, for an hour, go to max price. That's another way Aura can then kind of yo-yo the price up and this time it's going to, with using workflows, it would be on more of a fixed schedule as opposed to, when your price reaches your minimum price type of like a behavior, true or false scenario. The other way you can do it is just on a schedule such as here. And so, the idea is roughly the same. How if you were to look at the price of a ASIN that this workflow is active on like a Keepa chart, you would see, maybe during the day you start off up here and you kind of stair step down, competing. The idea is that, every night or during off-peak hours when it would be relatively inconsequential to raise your price up to your max price, that's where, and the Keepa chart could look something like this: stair step down, max price, stair step down, max price. And the idea is that you would get sales kind of along that cycle, so that, alternatively, whether if you just stayed put and you worked your way down to your min price, by the time the next day started, you would be starting at your min price as opposed to the max. So it's just another method to try to incentivize and encourage other offers to lift up the prices on that ASIN. Using workflows, it'd be on a schedule, to try to, increase the overall margin and sales price on that ASIN. Something I kind of want to, a disclosure that I feel obligated to share is that not every listing is going to respond well to having your price go up to your max. Meaning, sometimes you're going to go to your max price and the competitors who are sitting down, lower near your minimum price, sometimes they're just not going to care. Sometimes they're just going to be happy that you're out of their hair. And that's something that we're transparent about too. I would say it's relatively inconsequential to try, especially if you're doing it during off-peak hours when most people are asleep. But the upside is that you could increase the overall margin on your listing, whether you use it through workflows or an oscillation strategy.
I honestly don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if a competitor does not respond to your price increasing. Let them sell out at a lower margin, and then go eat up the sales that happen when they run out of inventory. At least in the arbitrage space, not a ton of people are carrying hundreds or thousands of units. It's a little harder in the wholesale space, where you might be carrying a lot deeper, but
100%.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you what, some people have given me trouble because, I am a shameless shill for Aura. And now I know that I am friends with just about everybody on the team. I happen to be good friends with Dylan, who's one of the co-founders. But the other reason is that, honestly, you guys make me look good. One of the reasons, in my opinion, is because your guys' customer service is, in my opinion, in the top 1% of SaaS companies. You are not you're not a VP of customers. You are the customer success manager. It's right in your name. And you guys will literally hold someone's hand through the process to make sure that their account is set up in a way that will serve them the best. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what that process looks like if somebody decides to take Aura for a trial, and how you help to make sure that they get everything set up and they understand how to properly use your program.
Yeah, absolutely. We really, so even with the titles, it's like we're CSMs, customer success managers, myself and Casey, but the success team is really larger than what the kind of title encapsulates it to be. We really pride ourselves on education. Education is a huge part because, when people leave Aura, when they cancel, we try to get as much insight into why they may be leaving as possible. And so, and the thing that we kind of can prevent is, if somebody doesn't understand the platform, or if somebody, may not have as much exposure or, much experience in the space, we try to give that ourselves. And so, we really try to envision the user experience in terms of like a journey. So it's like you come into the app, you see everything's empty. It's like, what do I do? So we try to think through the lens of a user who really just has limited knowledge in the space and may not be technical either. And so that's where we try to really hone in on our education, our consultative onboardings that we run, that I perform daily, multiple calls daily. And so, if a new user comes in, obviously they get put into our onboarding, flow where, we send them resources and emails that they can always respond to and reach a member of our team. We don't outsource any part of support or success, that we keep that in-house. And that's something that we're very prideful of. We really don't want to ever see a reduction in quality for new users coming in terms of the experience. If we can get in front of them ourselves and really make sure that they're comfortable and that everything that's delivered to them is palatable. And that's been a huge part of my role here, and the impact that I've had with Aura is, I get to meet with users and hear their pain points, hear their frustrations directly. And then, be able to offer resources and insights and my experience too, as a former seller, that can help them kind of navigate it. And so, obviously when you come in, you're greeted with onboarding emails, with links to resources. One of the first things we send out is a link to schedule an onboarding with me. We do complimentary consultative one-to-one onboardings via Zoom, where we'll come in, we will jump into your account. I'll share my screen. We'll jump into your account and basically you tell me, how you want the call to go. Is it going to be, do you have questions prepared? Is it something that you want to see me kind of run through and build? Would you like to build a strategy together? Would you like some more like macro knowledge on the Amazon selling space? It's almost like I almost sometimes feel like almost like a consultant or like a coach in some respect, based on some conversations that I have. And so, it gives us a lot of pride to be able to help users through not only just, the setting up their Aura for repricing journey, but also their Amazon selling journey as a whole. We're proud to be a small team, and, obviously we have limited resources and capacity, but we try to, create the highest return on investment for users coming in. And then, we grow together. We help them grow, they help us grow. And so it's a very symbiotic relationship that we try to curate for users.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, honestly, at your guys' price point, that's almost unheard of. That's which is incredible. Now, I've got one other question, and that question is, I know that you guys have access to just hordes of data. And I'm curious, do you have any information on what the results are of Maven compared to those who might still be using rules-based results inside of Aura, and kind of what that's shown you guys?
Yeah, we've, since we released, Aura 1.0, which included Maven back in the fall of 2023, a lot of the testing and assumptions and data that we use to build the app have been extremely validated by a lot of the feedback we receive. Whether that's received via like a follow-up onboarding call that I schedule with a user, even just search Aura Repricer on Twitter, and you'll see the validation's been there. We receive, regularly people stating that, these either products they haven't sold in months are all of a sudden starting to fly off the shelves. We've received plenty of feedback regarding, sales. Certain buy box is relatively low. They've only ever gotten sales at or around that amount. But, with Maven now, suddenly there's getting sales, 15, 20, 30% above the buy box too. Though that's regular feedback that we hear. And, as validating as it is, it's very fulfilling to be able to know that, that the tools that we offer, people access to are showing results, and people are being, receiving a return on their investment in our product. That's ultimately what we want, is to increase the ROI both on the product and for their actual products that they're selling to. And this is kind of how we approached, building Maven and building 1.0 is, it's like, how do we measure success? I feel that the way we measure success needs to change. It's kind of like the analogy I gave earlier, where it's like, would you be happy if sales increased but your margin went down? And so, like the two primary problems that we aim to solve with building 1.0 is more speed and more complexity without overwhelming the user. And so both of these are kind of answered by Hyperdrive in terms of speed. We have increased the rate at which we could submit and process price changes for you. And we've also increased the complexity of what Maven is able, or what Aura is able to accomplish for you, without increasing kind of the stress and overwhelm that usually comes along with it. And so, that's why, with a rule-based strategy, there's 30 settings. With Maven, there's one or two, and one of those happens to be a minimax price. So, as part of that, it's really distilling down, how do we make a better product that's faster and smarter, but easier to use and understand. And so that was kind of our high level macro approach to not only building Maven, but 1.0, implementing Hyperdrive and all the new features that we've gotten as well. And so, we're very excited to hear a lot of the feedback that we've gotten. We're continuing to build out, based on the feedback we receive. This is something else that I like to generally showcase too, is, in the app itself, you can click on, if you click the name icon, then feature requests, we've externalized, a lot of the feedback and feature and ideas that we receive from sellers. We sometimes would get feedbacks in emails, or, through the in-app chat. Sometimes I'd get it via onboardings, but here, this is where we've added a lot of visibility to it. And so you can see, what people want, other users can come in and upvote. It's kind of like Reddit. Once a certain idea gains a lot of traction, we then put that on our roadmap. And then once it's been built out and has kind of been pushed through a roadmap, we release it in a change log, like a diary of updates. And so this is just one of the ways that, we take feedback, more, I don't want to say more seriously, but it's more visible for everybody. And, and the features that really would create value, other users can jump in and kind of build momentum for those. And the data speaks for itself. So we're very open to feedback, and the feedback that we've gotten has been overwhelmingly favorable.
That's great. Now, I mean, one of the questions that's got to be on people's minds, especially if they haven't looked into using Aura before, is this gives me AI, this gives me rules-based repricing. This has got to be insanely expensive, but that is completely opposite from the truth. You guys have, after customers spoke up, you guys lowered your prices, number one. But secondly, you guys came out with the early stage program, which, in my opinion, was one of the most genius moves in Amazon software history. And so I was wondering, can you talk a little bit about the early stage program, who it's for, and then also talk about the other pricing models that you have for people?
Yeah, for sure. So our early stage program was a new edition that came out kind of following the 1.0 launch. Historically, we had been priced at 97 a month. That has been the pricing that's pretty much ingrained in a lot of legacy users' minds. And we've gotten feedback on that too. That's a relatively high entry barrier for newer users who may not have, enough, sufficient revenue to kind of justify spending, $100 a month on a software product. Regardless of the impact that it actually has. And so that's why we released the early stage program. And so the early stage program is two prerequisites, only two. You must be a new Aura user, and your monthly revenue must be under $10,000. Assuming both of those are true, you can apply on a goaura.com/early-stage. I'll actually pull up our pricing page here as well. So early stage, you can apply for early stage for $27 a month. One of the big benefits to enrolling in early stage is that you get all of the features in Aura. Some of them are scaled back a little bit, but with early stage, you get unlimited listings. You can enable Hyperdrive on up to 5 listings. You can have up to 50 listings using Maven. And so it's not that we completely restrict access to features on early stage. We still give it to you, which is just a little bit more limited. But you can still, pair listings, have your top selling listings running on Maven with some on Hyperdrive, and paying us, under $30 a month. And so, in this space, that is rather unheard of, that we've lowered the entry barrier while providing access to all of our performance features. And then, of course, if you were to graduate from the early stage program, meaning if your revenue were to exceed $10,000, you would then receive 50% off the standard price of whatever tier you then graduate up to following that. So it's really built to incentivize newer sellers to come in, increase their sales. And then, like I said before, it's a symbiotic relationship where we can grow together. We want to help you grow. And we kind of want to be there on your journey, while you are an early stage seller. And so, of course, once you graduate from the early stage, you can then select your other tiers that we offer. We have Essential, Plus, Pro. All of them share access to the same features. It's just increasing the access or the caps, which you can then utilize. So and this includes a number of marketplaces, number of listings you can reprice with Hyperdrive, with Maven. But we still allow you to experience that on early stage to find out if it's a good, if it adds value for you, if it's a good fit for you, and then we allow pathways to then upgrade at a discount to get more access to those features.
That's awesome. Now, if you guys are interested after watching, this video of how Aura works and all the kind of how the engine under it runs, there's a link below the video. You can go and sign up for a trial. It is an affiliate link, for full disclosure and to make sure the FTC doesn't come after me. But you will get a free trial. And of course, if you're in the early stage program, you get 50% off the next 3 months if you upgrade. Finn, this is incredible. You guys are a breath of fresh air in the Amazon SaaS space, and I appreciate you taking the time to kind of go over this with me and kind of explain how it works and why people may want to give it a try. So thanks so much, man. And for those of you watching, if you want to give it a spin, go down below. There's a special link for you guys to give it a shot and see how it works for you. I'd love to hear the results, and I'm sure they would as well. So, Finn, thanks so much, man. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chris. You as well.